Hi there. I'm Kim Weeks with Weeks Well, bringing you two in a row this week of Weeks Well events, which have emerged from COVID and from conversations that I've been having in the yoga world for 2 decades. So it's nice to see everybody logging in. And I am just, I'm not sure what the words are, so inspired and ecstatic and happy to welcome Angela Farmer, who is, as I was telling her before the call started, a legend, an icon, and a sage. And she is, so we were also talking on the call before coming on how many different places in the world we are. My producer, Alyssa, who's in Austria right now, and I'm in Denver, Colorado, recently transplanted here from Washington, D.C. And Angela is calling in from the island of Lesbos in Greece. And so I was thinking, Angela, this morning that one of the things I really want to do in this yoga lineages conversation is to, be as inclusive and representative as possible of the conversation of modern yoga in the context of lineage, what it is and why it matters. And so Angela was among the first people I thought of to reach out to when I brought this conversation to my platform and have created sort of roundtable conversations and these intimate one-on-ones, for example, with Angela. And so anyway, I really appreciate you're all coming. We're noticing that the live event is really fun because it's more intimate and smaller than ultimately the conversation becomes, because most people we are seeing, it's sort of trending that people podcast this later or watch it in clips, click through from, the clips we provide on social media. And so if you'll share with your networks and see what, if they're interested, which I'm sure they will be after this hour with Angela, we all will be interested in wanting more, or at least to replay and to listen. So to the live attendees, we're so glad you're here. Before I asked two kind of questions of the audience, we're just polling two questions at the beginning to see, I don't know who you are and where you're coming from. And so anyway, as we get into this sort of housekeeping of the call, you can always chat into us on the Q&A. Right now, your screen will show, are you a yoga student, yoga teacher, or both? We're super interested in, again, who we're talking to. So if you don't mind answering, thank you. And then are you okay. Anyway, okay, here we go. Thank you for answering. I'm not sure what happened with the previous question because it looks like we've asked it twice. And then after you all answer that, thank you for just letting us know. We're going to ask you a second question and I'll let Alyssa put that up. We're still working out how to do this. So while Alyssa gets the second question up, I'll say, okay, here we go. How did you hear about this session? Did you hear about it from Angela, from us, from, social media? And that's it. So thank you for that. So the Q&A is where you can ask questions throughout the call. We'd like it to be a lively kind of exchange and dialogue, as Angela said previously, before we started the call. Questions are always good. And I've got a lot, and I know you've got a lot, and we just also want to listen. And so the chat you'll see coming out to you now will be links from Angela. I'm sure most of you know about her partner, Victor van Kooten. And so Angela and victoryoga.com, Angela?
Angela-victor.com.
Okay. So it's out there. So please take a look at that. And because they have events coming, hopefully there will be more as we sort of crack open the egg again and try to live in this new normal, the next new normal. So anyway, Angela, thank you so much for taking the time to come in and talk about yoga lineages and talk about your experience in them. For those who don't know Angela, she's been practicing yoga for, I'm going to guess, more than 40 years. Is that a good guess?
Yes, I would say, wait a minute, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, goodness, nearly 50 years.
Oh, 50 years. Okay. So over 50 years, hold on. I'm just asking Alyssa if we're recording. I think we are. And so you were a senior Iyengar yoga teacher and were in a lineage, and you now have, what we've described as your own, gosh, you wrote to me and said it's your own personal journey and experience, even if that could be called a lineage. So that's what I'd really love to talk about. And also talk about the thing that you said to me last week, which is that you think of lineages kind of like the musical scales. So can we start there and you talk about your journey in yoga and how you went through lineage, the value it held for you, and what's happened since then?
When I think about lineage, and really ask myself, where does it come from and what is it? I realized that a lineage comes from one person who, for whatever reason, has found a way to come to a place of what we might call enlightenment, great wisdom, and therefore exudes a certain energy, a certain presence, a stability in, one could say, the essence of being. And that inevitably attracts people. And then it continues, they become followers, and then a teaching begins to develop. Because if someone has been diving very deep inside and uncovering and cleaning themselves from everything that's unnecessary so that they can become in harmony with life, with themselves, with their surroundings, when they're going to help people who seem to be attracted to them, they begin to evolve a teaching. The teaching develops and the originator dies or is crucified or whatever. And so then the followers take over and they do their best to remember what they learned. But they of course start to teach and it becomes more organized and more structured. And so it continues out. So it becomes like a kind of pyramid. And eventually, like everything in nature, it has to fall apart. That's the way things are. Things come up and they're clear and pure and beautiful, whether we can call it a whole civilization or a religion or a period in art. And then, like a flower, like nature, it opens out and becomes more colorful and more exotic, and eventually falls apart because it has to return back into the earth, into the matrix for a new life to begin. So there's nothing wrong in a lineage, but we come into a lineage at different times. We may be very fortunate and meet a great enlightened being and be very inspired by them and then take their teaching out, or we may come in many generations later and learn something that has become so organized and so complicated that it seems almost impossible to achieve what is set before you. And that's why I say it's a bit like learning the scales on a piano. And what really always inspired me was what Krishna said to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita on the battlefield. It is better to follow your own dharma imperfectly than to follow another's dharma perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And then comes the real hammer. It's better to die than to follow another's dharma.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole point of the lineage is for people to get started. Something, when you meet some kind of teacher or training, you're attracted for some reason, it calls you. And so you go into that. And in the beginning, it's incredibly exciting, very difficult, and you wonder how you're ever going to manage in it. And then gradually you become more accustomed to it. And maybe for some people, it is their dharma to spend their life in a monastery,
Mm-hmm.
or to stay devoted and serving and teaching what they learn from their teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But for others, it's really essential, and I think you have to find out that for yourself. It's essential to know when to leave. And when you leave a lineage or a teacher or an organized religion, it doesn't mean you throw everything out, you throw the baby out with the bathwater. It just means that you say, now I must take my own journey. And so even in the yogic traditions, it is said that when you reach 60, you must leave everything behind, family and whatever else you do, go into the forest and meditate.
Mm-hmm.
So that is actually there. And I never knew or thought too much about all those things, but there came a point in working with Iyengar when I knew I had to leave.
Mm-hmm.
It was quite clear.
Mm-hmm.
I could go on learning more and more of the postures and all that, but inside me something said, no, I have to go in another direction. And I, in my innocence, I suppose, thought I have to find another teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I had to find something that was felt more spiritually oriented. But I did not find anybody. I found some wonderful yogis. And every teacher I've met, I'm grateful for. But eventually I understood I have to turn back, stop looking out. I have to turn back and go inside
Mm-hmm.
and start here.
Mm-hmm.
And Victor and I had quite a dramatic exit from the Iyengar community. And we were literally thrown out, not by Iyengar, but by the committee of the Iyengar committee in the States at that time. And we were blacklisted. And at the time, it was a bit of a shock. And the students were told that if they came to us, and you know how in any community, word goes out overnight, everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
So all over the world, people suddenly were told that Victor and Angela were blacklisted. And if anybody went to their classes, they would lose their certificate and not be allowed to go study in India.
This was what year? Can you ground that moment in a decade, even the 90s? Because I heard
so
this
bad
thing
at,
yeah.
I can tell you exactly, if you know when the first International Iyengar conference started, because that's when Victor spoke out a little bit. He was concerned about the way things were evolving with all these certificates being developed and some attitudes of teachers. And he tried to present it that we should keep things more simple and direct. And so he was, yes, that was.
Yeah, it may have been.
I think he was a voice for many people. He dared to bring out what was on many people's minds, but they never dared say it. And then came the big thing that if they wanted to stay in the Iyengar community, they had to not go the way we were going. And it was a division. I think that it's kind of long ago and all over. For me, it was actually a blessing because we lost, I would say, maybe 90% of our students. So then we were on tour and we had really big classes. And so we were going to Boston and they had hired a very big hall. And because of what happened, people were so afraid that they all canceled. And I think there were 8 students turned up. So we did the class in somebody's living room. And for me, I took it as an opportunity to try to ask myself 2 questions. One was, so who am I? Because the really interesting thing is, if you get given responsibility and if you start to have a lot of students, you begin to be put up on another level. And then you feel you have to maintain a certain level to maintain what the students expect from you. And actually you become somebody different. Or you add a sort of false aura to your personality. And so when I said, who am I? And I was going around the world as an Iyengar senior teacher. And where I knew very well that wherever I went, there would be almost a red carpet laid out. I would always have students. My income would always be secure. It was a sort of comforting feeling. And then overnight, that was all gone. And so,
and I want to put just a quick point in this, because it is, I think, if there's lots of people on the call, maybe, or be listening to this, are yoga teachers for whom making a living is not possible now, because at the time that you were experiencing this, yoga teachers were actually making a good living, because the supply of yoga teachers was, different compared with the demand. Now there is so much supply and the demand has only increased a certain amount. So I just want to make, things have changed so much in 20 years in this free market, sort of capitalization problem. I was, talking in an accessibility conversation yesterday. Okay. Matt Stanford, by the way, is coming in a couple of weeks as the first Iyengar, the first person who really got the accessibility conversation on the map. He's also an Iyengar yoga teacher. He and I have had similar conversations, some conversations around this whole sort of, thing. So I just would like to say that, this person with cerebral palsy yesterday, this yoga teacher with cerebral palsy, was saying necessarily the free market system is totally misaligned with what yoga teaching could or should be, because it is always about getting bigger, growing more, like whatever. And that expansion, which has no force of contraction, like written into its laws, is what I think where we are as a society right now, which is to have these messaging, like from Lesbos, like from Denver, wherever, come up from the earth,
Well,
to say,
let me tell you this, when I started yoga, I first came across yoga in a book by Aldous Huxley. And there was no yoga in England. Yeah. Nobody knew what yoga was. They thought it was sitting on a bed of nails or staring at your navel, which maybe it is sometimes.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Yes. There was nothing. And so it said then one sentence, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So I put the book away and went on with my life. I was actually training to be a school teacher, which I became. And after several years, I suddenly had the opportunity to go to a yoga class by one of Iyengar's first teachers in England. He was coming to work with Yehudi Menuhin, the famous violinist, to give him private classes. And Yehudi's secretary organized a little class on the side to give Iyengar a little bit extra income. And it was just a very small bunch of women who went. And I think this Diana Clifton, the one I met, had only been with him a very short time, but she had some basics, and I was thrilled to bits, and immediately started to go to her classes. So it started like that, but there was no open forum for becoming a yoga teacher. And it took many, many years. I had to continue my school teaching and then teach yoga on the side. And I never, ever thought of really being able to stand on my legs from the income from yoga teaching, because in England, everybody thought yoga is just for housewives and it's a hobby. So you shouldn't even charge money for it.
And can you help me reconcile this in my mind? If people in Britain, by the way, I discovered yoga in Britain also when I was living in London, working for JP Morgan, looking for a book on, I didn't even know, but it was a book called Stretching, written by, I've got it right here somewhere. And every single thing is a yoga pose. There's tons of stuff about the breath, but you just couldn't say it was yoga because yoga was for, lying on a bed of nails or the navel. So can you reconcile for me or talk a little bit about how in the same place people could think of yoga as bed of nails and for housewives? What's that thread in your mind?
I have no idea.
Okay.
No idea.
Yeah, I just find it so fascinating that in the one hand, in the sort of like, it seems to me the masculine sphere, it's about the most excess you can do, kind of like a fraternity, like how many beers can you bong, I'm sure it's worse now, versus like how many nails can you lie on? Because in both cases,
I think the way Iyengar was very clever is that he was able to bring it out in a way, and he always told us, don't talk about anything spiritual, just make it for health. And so the way it came out was simple stretching exercises.
Yeah, which are great.
And then gradually more. And I think so people thought it's just another keep fit thing. Right. So that's probably how it came out.
Well, thank you for that diversion.
Very soon,
back to you.
Very soon it did become a kind of a business. That's true.
Yeah.
As it spread very fast, which is interesting, which means that there was a hunger for it. And I think many, many people were searching for something that would touch them more deeply than what they were finding around. I mean, the people who had spiritual interests were looking for something different. And it was the time also of turning to the East, and the East was suddenly opening up with a whole other offering. And young people, especially with the Beatles going to India and Maharishi and all that, there was suddenly a tremendous divergence of interest towards the East. So it was that time. It was an extraordinary time.
Yeah.
And when you live in time, you never realize, but later you realize how extraordinary it was.
Yeah, totally.
And so I had always loved doing things with my body. And so this is the type of background I had. Only after a year or two of Iyengar came every year to London just for 3 weeks and worked with Yehudi Menuhin, and then gave about 6 or 7 classes that those of us who knew about it were able to go to.
Did you?
And
this
it started
is
very
Yehudi
small,
Menuhin, right? Is that what you just said? Yehudi Menuhin? That's he would
Yehudi Menuhin is a famous violinist.
Yeah, no, yeah.
And he had gone to Iyengar in India because he was recommended. He had some health problem, and Iyengar helped him. And he's a very strong, clear man, and he worked very hard at what Iyengar showed him, and then brought Iyengar over every year. So for Iyengar, it was the first step out into the world.
I see.
And so he started there in London.
So London was the first place that BKS Iyengar went after India. You know, a friend of mine, Lori Ritland, who is, you know, a senior Iyengar yoga teacher now, you know, talks about how Mr. Iyengar was a South Asian man who lived there, grew up there, developed there, was a, you know, culturally South Asian, and did not do much travel outside of the United States except to go teach, like in capacities like you're describing, which I think in terms of understanding the lineage is extremely important. And so I just want to clarify, London was his first stop basically after, I think he was in Pune. I don't know if it was Pune the whole time or wherever he
Pune.
Pune. It is. So it was always Pune. Okay. Yeah, I thought
he studied with Krishnamacharya, who was actually his sister's husband. His father died when he was young.
Yeah.
And he also had some health problems. He was somewhat sickly. And Krishnamacharya, who's an amazing yogi, said, send him to me. So and he started off with Krishnamacharya, but then Krishnamacharya was going on a tour demonstrating yoga and in India, and he took Iyengar with him. And when they went to Pune, they did a demonstration. They gave a demonstration in front of the colonel-in-chief of the British Army that was stationed there. And the colonel said to him, please, would you leave your student behind to train my cadets? So that was Iyengar's first job. And I think he was quite young, maybe 18 or something like that.
Oh my God.
Okay. And he told me that he was really not sure how to go about it because there were all these big, tough guys. And he's not a tall man.
Yeah, he was short.
How was he was the same age as them. How was he going to
establish some
control them? And so he watched the sergeant major and took his cues from how a sergeant major commands everybody and gets them lined up and all that. And that's how the military side came into his yoga.
Okay.
And I think it appealed to him. He liked it. And it worked for him. And so it was for it, you know, my feeling is it is more male oriented in the way of the structure and the discipline. I really appreciated that in the beginning, and but it was very tough. The problem for me was that my body was had been very badly damaged through various reasons, but one of the main ones was very serious surgery, which I should never have had. That left me depleted, literally cut in half twice, and so my energy was very unbalanced. And trying the emphasis was on achievement, doing the pose correctly. And if you have a normal, natural, healthy body, that's fine. But if you have any dysfunctions in your body, it's going to distort them even more. And Iyengar was very wild. He was exciting. I mean, I found it very exciting in the early days. And we were a very small group. And he selected what he called the advanced ones. And there were about 4 or 5 of us. So it was a very exciting situation. But, you know, he would throw you into back bends and pull your body around. And I realized the only way to survive was to totally relax. But in so doing, he overstretched the weak parts of my body, and the parts that were damaged got more damaged. And so actually that kind of work set me back. I went on and I didn't know that. I just thought, how exciting, you know, I'm doing all these poses. But actually, my journey out of that system, and I don't hold it against Iyengar or anyone, that was my journey. And honestly, the only way we can evolve is by meeting challenges, blocks, and setbacks. And then when you start to go inside yourself, you have to find those inside you, and your whole life history is written in your body. So you begin to find those places in your body that hurt or are dysfunctional, and those become your workplace. Not
right.
I mean, I did all these exciting advanced poses, but at the extent of a lot of dysfunctions taking place. Not always, but quite a lot.
Yeah. And it's
so
yeah. I would, it seemed my experience as an Iyengar yoga teacher is that, and a long time Iyengar practitioner, but only in a small slice of the community, which has gotten so big compared to where it was then, even though it is such a small percentage of the overarching yoga market. You know, the most amazing thing to me is that in 2004, something like 70% of yoga practitioners identified with being an Iyengar yoga student. And today, 2% identify with being an Iyengar yoga practitioner. And, you know, that is a huge drop from a place where, I don't know, 10 or 11 million people were doing yoga to now, this is just in the United States, by the way, to be very clear, we're talking US numbers. Now it's like, you know, I don't know, 20.
I think that I know when I started off on my own, and I didn't quite know, there was no other way of doing yoga that I knew of, except of course other kinds of yoga like meditation or chanting, and that sort of practices. But I wanted to use my body. My body, I feel, is my instrument and the way I learn. And there was no other teacher. And also was the whole thing of masculine and feminine.
Yeah.
And I began to realize that way of working had pulled out my more masculine side always, the whole time, and also made me very critical, because that teaching tells you have to do something in a set way, and that's right and that's wrong. And in the beginning, it was exciting to try to get it right. But in the end, you become very critical of yourself, because you're saying, oh, that's my bad side. You know, so if you do a demonstration, you do it on your good side. Yes. And so you look at your body from the outside, and then you look at the students from the outside of how to help them get into the pose, instead of finding yourself inside, and the way the energy moves in your body and the where it doesn't move, and why and how can you help the energy
Change
to
that.
move more freely.
Yeah.
And inevitably, then you cannot stick yourself in a pretzel pose, because energy moves in a flow. It curls and it swirls, and it does not stay stuck in a straight line. And that works for the military, but you have to harden up and you have to use your muscles to hold the pose.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of emphasis of building strength and building muscle.
Yeah.
Actually, as I began to approach from the inside more, and I didn't really know what I was doing because there was nobody to guide me, but I began to feel things in a whole different way. And that people said to me, oh, this is more feminine. You're doing yoga in a more. So I became known because I was still teaching in Iyengar communities. I was traveling and teaching, and people still asked me to come, but they explained it to the Iyengar community by saying, and this was actually before we got thrown out. They said, well, Angela represents the feminine of Iyengar, which to me was I had no idea about that. I was just trying to find my own way. And at a certain point, my practice became so far removed from the way yoga was being taught in the Iyengar scene, which was everything had to be like this and straight and correct. And mine was much more about undoing things and releasing things and moving the energy. I discovered, I realized that I think I gave you this image, like a polar bear on two pieces of ice that were floating away from each other.
Splitting.
I was becoming schizophrenic because I was teaching Iyengar yoga and practicing a whole different way. And in one class in Feather Pipe Ranch up in Montana, I didn't know what to do. It was in the middle of the class. So I just went out.
Was that when India was there? Was India there at that time?
Yes. India Superior was there.
R.I.P. She is an amazing woman.
Yes, she was not doing coming to classes, but she was always there. Her presence was there. So I went out onto the lawn in front of the pond and all that sky, and there was a big black cloud coming up. And I just said, what do I do? And this strong voice came through, stand up and speak. And I took it to mean that I must share what I'm practicing. So I went back to the class.
I see.
And very tentatively started to share my own practice, thinking people would walk out or be really annoyed. And instead, at the end of the class, people came up and said, this is how yoga used to be for me. Oh, this is how I practice in my room secretly. Oh, this feels so good. And especially women, I think, had been longing to open up and move more freely. And I think maybe that I opened the door for that because it went out like that. And people were taking just from 1 or 2 courses I gave, taking it out and calling it a name. I did one course on breathing, and immediately, suddenly, one student went out and organized I think it was called the Oregon breathing, breathing something or other, and made posters about breathe and breath. And so it was like a crack was happening, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one. It was happening in other places, but we had to break out of this encasement in a strict military approach.
Can I ask a question about that? I have 2 questions. One sort of socio-cultural, and the other one is, I think, just about like practice itself. So I'm just going to ask them both at the same time and tell me, answer whichever one. But like, it really sounds to me like you and Victor went through like cancel culture decades before it actually, I heard you use the word cancel, which is why I'm bringing it back. And it also sounds to me like what you're saying is that what you were doing is sort of heretical. Is that too strong a word? But that's the word that comes to my mind, so I'm going to name it.
Yes.
And so I guess my question is, why would the Iyengars blackball you? Like, to have you leave is one thing. Like, sorry, you're just not teaching in the method. Which, did it have document? I don't know. I wonder what the method looked like then. So that's like that question. And the other question for yoga practitioners, okay, because we're talking about this sort of high level teaching thing. It's just fascinating because one thing I learned from Eric Schiffman in the first teacher training I did with him was, once you become a yoga teacher, you will never take a yoga class the same way again. It's like a threshold, it's a Rubicon, you pass through, because you're always thinking about, it's meta. You're thinking about it as a student, but you really are also thinking about it. You can't help but think about it as a teacher. So what does a yoga student do in the context of lineage today in your mind? What advice would you give a yoga student about lineage? Okay, so there's that. And then there's a sociocultural question about, why would the Iyengars...
which question do you want first?
Let's start with the first one I asked. Why would the Iyengars, what like blackball? That's such a strong word. So traumatic.
Yes, but if you look at any institution or any even spiritual situation, when somebody moves out, they're persecuted in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
So if you decide to go a different way, I think it's fear, because if you belong to something, you give yourself to it.
Yeah.
And then if somebody moves out, it sets up a doubt. And rather than face the doubt and say, let me find out why did they move out? Because maybe you have a doubt inside yourself, or you close up and you make them blacklisted. I mean, just look at some of the amazing doctors who've been thrown out because they offered a way. They believed in saving the lives of patients by giving medicine that, well, we won't go into all that because I know it's a political thing, but so many good people have been thrown out in this present situation we're in. But go back to anyone. Jesus was a heretic.
Yeah, right. He was.
And they can pinpoint you in just one thing you say. And I have to say that when we moved out, and I think Victor probably felt the same, but I certainly felt what am I doing something terrible? But and where am I going? Because I was going not to something else. I was going out into nothing. But I think you have to find your own dharma. This is the thing, right. To have the courage to decide that you're now going to find your own way. And I think everybody at a certain point in life, some people go on wanting to be students until they're 95. Following one person, and maybe that is their dharma. I don't know, but I think for me, when I came to about 50, I think I thought I can go on learning more and more for the rest of my life. I really have to stop now and start going in the other direction. And my practice has gone more and more like that until now. I look at all the books that I have, spiritual books and yoga books. They just sit on the shelf. Victor has a lovely way of describing it, of knowledge. He said, knowledge is knowing on the ledge.
That's great. I love it.
So what I try to do now, well, what I do in my own practice is quite simply meet myself.
Right.
And there's more than enough to learn and to work. And we are all instruments. And if we can come back from feeling that you don't know enough and that you have to go to somebody and you have to ask somebody, you can ask somebody anytime and take things, but only if you go to a teacher, just see, does this help me become more who I am? Not, am I going to be a better student, a better teacher?
Right.
But is it helping me become more who I am? Because there's nothing else we're really meant to do in this life.
Totally.
If you can become who you truly are, you're enlightened. Because we are. Basically, in essence, we are enlightened. We're a shining light. And but to peel back all the other stuff, and I think just in a practical way, from the physical point of view, a lot of the work has been about opening up the back body so you have somewhere to come back to, because people are so pushed out. You're pushed out of the womb into the world. And then you have to look out into the community and you have to deal with things that come at you. And then you're pushed into school where you're given knowledge that you have to learn. And then you have to do something with it. And, why are we sending all these rockets out into space and go to the moon, go to Mars? Actually,
I think about that all the time.
Come back and see what you can do.
Totally.
And it sounds selfish. It really sounds selfish. I remember my mother saying, when I said, oh, I have to go and practice now, but you did that yesterday. People think it's selfish to work on yourself.
Yeah.
But if you go to the parts of you that are really struggling inside and start to make friends with them, you begin to feel more at ease in yourself, and then more at ease with the people around you and your surroundings. And gradually you can let go of more. It's a process.
Well, and
so it goes into your other question.
Yes, exactly. Which quickly, as you prepare to answer that one, I want to say to everybody, if you do have questions, send them into the Q&A. I have like so many. I've written a bunch of notes. And also, Angela, we want to respect your time. It's 12 minutes before the hour. So I just want to make sure if you want to answer a few more questions, go a little bit after, you just let us know, okay? But back to the students.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I don't have a schedule.
Okay.
Yes. What I am learning just to respect that everybody has their own way and their own path. But if you ask me, I would say there's only one place to go, and that's here.
Right.
And when you start going inside, you meet the blocks, you meet the challenges. Saturn in astrology is the great teacher. And what does he do? He's the great teacher. You go to a great teacher, you think he's going to give you some wonderful information and going to elevate you. No.
Did you say Saturn or Jupiter? Saturn.
Saturn. Yeah. And what does Saturn do? He comes down like a heavy pile of earth on you.
Totally.
He stops you. And I had a heavy fall back in December, a really serious fall, all the way down our spiral staircase, which is sharp edge tiles. I damaged every part of my body. I'm still in recovery. It's taken ages. I couldn't move without incredible pain. But I had been doing a lot of practice because thanks to the COVID restrictions, there was nothing else you could do really, except stay home. And I had been really finding new places that I could work into and get more into my deep stuff. And I was feeling happier and more at ease and comfortable with myself and with life and loving this beautiful valley that we live in. And I was all set up for the day. I got up early and I had collected some bags of garbage and some other stuff to take downstairs. I was going to feed the cats. We have about 50, 60 cats that come here for breakfast time. And then I was going to do my practice, go for a winter swim, and then do my Zoom class in the evening. And it was like the whole day was opening out in front of me, and whoosh, bang. I went tumble, bang, crash, hit everything all the way down the stairs. And looking back, I think, what really did I learn from that? Just stay here. I was thinking, what a wonderful day I'm going out into. But Saturn said, no, stay where you are. You're now going to walk down the stairs, put the garbage away, feed the cats. Just stay in this present moment. And that if you start, I mean, everybody who's listening, I'm sure you all have your own practice. So that's great. That's where you start. But the practice is about you, not about achieving something outside you. It doesn't matter if you can do a pose or not. And actually, you won't be a better teacher if you do the poses perfectly. You'll be a better teacher if you pay attention to this knee that hurts and find how you can help it and how you can communicate with it. Because inside the body are lots of little people, and all these people have voices. And if you read the beautiful story of Inanna going down into the underworld, and she is totally annihilated.
Inanna, I-N-A-N-A?
Inanna.
E-I-N-A-N-A?
No, I-N, sometimes it's two N's, sometimes it's one N. I-N-N-A, I think. Inanna. And
okay.
You find one version on the internet. It's an incredible story from Sumerian times that was lost. It came at the time when the matriarchal period, the period of Taurus, was beginning to disintegrate, as every period does. And so the goddess was disappearing. And Inanna was the goddess that they all loved. And she was being put up in the moon. She became the moon goddess. But the feminine was being separated.
Yep. I'm looking at my goddess.
And yes, so if you think of the time when dance, was when dancers were put up on their toes, the feminine is being made into the beautiful goddess up
Here's
here.
Inanna.
Yes.
I've got
there
Inanna
you go.
here. Yeah, the star.
Yeah. So she, this story was written on blocks of stone in hieroglyphs, and they only found it fairly recently. I don't know, maybe 30 years ago. And gradually they were able to decipher the hieroglyphs and find this incredible story. And for any woman, it's a story that can just bring healing, because she felt she needed to go and visit her sister who lived in the underworld.
Right.
And that is the whole thing. You were elevated up as women to either be beautiful goddesses that the men will worship, or to be hardworking creatures which uses the masculine side of us, and we push our feminine side away. And our dark or sister side is the part of us that's suppressed, and we all have that to some extent, and part of it's cultural and part of it's personal. What happens to you, if you've been sexually abused or hurt in some way, and you've squashed down a lot of aspects of yourself. So the Yanana story is about going back to her sister, and her sister who's very sad and angry. And she's so angry that when Inanna comes down to visit her and she hears that she's coming, she sends her doorman out to annihilate. So it's not like Persephone going into the underworld in the Greek story for the winter to the god Pluto and marry him. Not very nice, but
exactly. Yeah, exactly. There's
but
that story
this is different. This is a feminine story. She's going to find her sister, and he literally slices her in half, and Ereshkigal, who's so angry, says, hang the flesh up on that meat hook. So I see it like the superstar yoga teacher who is perfect body, immaculate leotard, and can do all the poses. And she's going down to visit her ugly old hag sister. And the sister doesn't want this superstar yoga teacher to come down. She'll tell me I should go on a diet. She'll tell me I shouldn't wear those stupid clothes. She'll tell me my hair needs cutting. That's the sort of scene. And so we have to look at these two sides of ourselves. But you find your other side when you go into your body immediately. Anywhere that hurts, anywhere that is stiff. So you go there, but the way she was.
Are you saying that what hurts is the feminine? Is that did I hear that correctly?
No, I'm not saying that.
Oh, okay.
It's all the feminine, actually. But what hurts is where there is somebody inside you who is very unhappy.
The person. Totally. Yes, totally. Yes.
And that part of you is screaming out, help. So either you avoid them or you go to them. And the message was, because these two little creatures that were sent to help her climb under the door of Ereshkigal's queendom, and they sit beside her. And she says, oh, my head aches. And they've been told by the god of the sea, which is really interesting, because the sea is water and emotion. So it's all about getting back to the emotions that are locked up inside your body, inside these places that hurt. And they have to repeat what she says. So they sit there and they say, oh, your head aches. Because you know very well, when you're upset, you don't want someone to come and say, oh, poor darling, how can I help you? You want someone just to listen to you, just to be there. And so that's what we have to do in our body. Just be with the part that is holding on tight like this and say, I'm here for you. I'm not going to fix you. I'm not going to tell you what the right thing to do is. I'm not going to criticize you. I'm just here for you. I understand that you are hurting, that you are in pain. And that is the beginning. And in that way, you begin to meet the place, and it starts showing up, and you start finding and seeing your anatomy inside you in an extraordinary way. And then what we do is to bring in the concept of energy moving. So like a tree has roots that go into the ground, you can start to feel your energy going down into the ground like roots. I mean, one of my greatest teachers is the trees. And we're surrounded by trees here, and they are so wonderful. So if you just stand in front of a tree and open yourself, you feel that tree stability. It's quiet. It's been there for years. It's not going anywhere. It goes through the storms. Sometimes it gets knocked over. Sometimes somebody cuts it. and it just stays there and does its thing, produces its leaves
Channels.
and its fruits.
It channels.
Mm.
I mean, it channels light energy into the
Yes.
ground to grow, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
so it's 10 o'clock, or sorry, 10 o'clock my time, it's 12 o'clock Eastern. And what time is it there for you? 7 now?
Yeah.
It's 7. Okay. So there are so many things that I want to ask. Oh yeah, it's to just say, I guess it's not like point counterpoint, but what I think of is that the details of the body that come from the perspectives of teachers that I've had have, first of all, over a period of time, been clear to me as like their perspective and not like the truth with a capital T. So I'm just saying this out loud. So I've taken those details into my own practice with like just so much wonder and interest, like what would they do if they saw this detail, or what, like, but continuously. And I thought about this so much in my yoga practice. I would go into my practice and say, what would my teacher say here? Or I would hear that voice, but I would ask the question, what should I do? 100% of the time, the answer was mine. The answer came from me. I would just ask the question at the beginning and just wait. And then I would realize, oh my God, like this is as legitimate an answer as I could get any place else. So why not take it and see where it goes? So I just want to say that I wonder if, as you're saying all these things, I guess I'm just appending it, maybe the path of the practice is like, how much outside information or interaction do you need to either support yourself as you practice, or until the point where you jump off like you have directly and deeply and like inexorably into the interior, into the self.
Kim, it's very personal. It's very personal, and you can be sure it will come at the right time. Either you will be knocked down by the powers that be, or you will know suddenly now is my time to move on, or it will happen gradually, and gradually you find that actually you don't need to go to teachers so much anymore, and that your practice becomes your teacher, and your experience in your life. I mean, everything you do and all your interactions become your teachers. And you just start looking at life from a whole different point of view, not something you have to go out and achieve or do something about, but just watch how things are happening in you. And one thing I found very, very helpful is to notice, this is about anxiety and fear, to notice when something makes me anxious. If I have to hurry, that's one thing. Or if I feel somebody's expecting something from me, that's another thing. I began to notice a certain part in my body tightening up. And I think if you can even imagine a situation that makes you feel either nervous or frightened or anxious. Sometimes it's a person, you think of them coming into your house and your body does this. Everybody has their own place where they tighten up first. And when you find that place, it takes a while, but gradually you will notice when you're in one of these situations, oh, I've tightened up again in that place. For me, it was in my back. It is in my back. If I'm in a hurry, if I'm trying to make dinner quickly, I've tightened my back again. I'm coming in instead of out. I don't have to do that anymore. And then it releases and everything changes. And this is the way the teaching, this kind of approach is about undoing. Not doing, undoing. Undoing the block here that is stopping the energy flowing through. Releasing. We hold so much anxiety, we hold so much responsibility on the shoulders, but when you talk to your shoulder and say, would you like to let go?
Oh, that's so nice.
How about letting go of that person and you find something drops. So it's a fascinating, I mean, I could talk forever, but
I know. I
it's
was
a
going to say,
fascinating process.
yeah, there's one question, and I think that you've answered it, but I'm going to make sure to, if there's anything else you want to say to the specific question. But I want to tell you that when I realized the etymology of shoulders and should, the shoulders, the SH, it changed my entire life forever. I was like, oh, anyway, I should be a should. And so anyway, Stephanie asks, can you talk about how your positive journey of yogic awareness can help us navigate our aging processes, limitations, and helping us think about our asana practice and also focus more on pranayama and meditation? Is there anything else you'd like to say? I feel like I've heard you say a lot, but maybe not as specifically about.
I missed one word. How can it help what?
Of course. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the Q&A. Can you help us navigate our aging processes?
Aging, okay.
And limitations associated.
Yeah, yes, indeed. I'm doing that every day. The funny thing is that the more I enter this process of just simply being and accepting, and then meeting these different places in my body in a whole different way, not criticizing them or expecting them to do anything, I actually feel better in my body, and in a way, well, better, happier, freer. I don't do all the exotic poses I used to do, but I do things where I meet myself in a way, and I spend time, much longer time, in one place, just meeting myself and watching how slowly little bits begin to unwind when they feel safe, because I am actually there instead of here expecting this to do something.
Totally.
That this actually has given me a feeling of being younger, and certainly younger, happier, and just getting away from doing a practice that you feel you should do, or that somebody expects you to do, or your students expect you to do. And just being who you are. Okay, I'm old. I'm nearly 84, and I'm not as supple as you. I can't do the things you do. That's great. You do what you do. I am who I am, and I'm feeling good about it. About wrinkles, I remember telling a class once at Kripalu, I'm learning to actually live with my wrinkles, because I live with olive trees and they are all wrinkled up and they're so beautiful. Right. You can be beautiful, absolutely, from the inside out. And you carry all that with you. And the worst thing is to start trying to do things from the outside on your body. I mean, I could have a facelift. Yes, okay, I would probably look 35. I could dye my hair, but why not just be who you are, like the olive trees? Yeah. I think that is the perfect place to end this conversation. And it's also, from my time, 10:08, which feels very sacred. Yes. And okay. So, yeah, Angela, I have to tell you, it has just been such a delight talking to you and connecting with you for the, you have lived, you are in the ether of the yoga community, at least of the practitioners my age and who've been taking yoga as long as I had I'm not sure what the verb is anymore. But we've been in yoga for a long time. And so, so to everybody. Well, it's a pleasure, Kim, and thank you for inviting me so much. And thank you for doing what you're doing and being such a lovely person. I think it's great. I wish you many years of joyful sharing. Oh,
Thank you. And likewise to you. I hope that I will have the chance to maybe see you. And it seems to me I should be booking a trip
You're
to Greece.
welcome here anytime. Yes.
I'd love to
And
see
I
you.
wanted to say thank you to
Yeah.
Alicia, and to Bernd for supporting us in this, and Tia.
And Tia, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for everybody on this call. Thank you for all of you joining. I hope you'll continue on with us in this yoga lineages conversation. I feel like I'm just going to email Angela right after this and ask her when she can come back. And so we can have part 2 of lineage, or who knows what else. There's so many things to talk about. And let's just keep this. I don't know. I'm thinking about
The one thing I would like just to add for the women,
yes.
that a woman, and I will find out, I've forgotten her name at the moment, but she did an amazing study in India of the goddess, and in her process, she discovered that there is a lineage of women yoginis.
What?
And they have never been out in the front. They've always worked in the back. They have never written, they don't write anything down, but they are yoginis, and some live in the forest. Some live in the mountains, some live in communities, little small communities, and some are even married and live a so-called normal life. And all the main yoga male yogis, teachers and saints, part of their training was to go and study with one of these yoginis. And she said she came to the course I was giving for women in California, and she said, you are part of that lineage. And that was, I hadn't been looking for a lineage, but it somehow actually gave me a huge support. Because those yoginis are coming from themselves, from their own inner source, their connection as an instrument from nature and spirituality through nature, the nature of being who we are. And I think as women, this is the most beautiful path to follow the path of being who you are.
Yeah. There's so many. Yeah. Thank you. Let's end on that note for sure. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to everybody who's here. And I hope I'll see you again, Angela. Thank you so much. And thank you, Tia and Bernd and Alyssa. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.
Namaste.